One of the number one concerns people have when getting into memory techniques for language learning is avoiding saturation. See, they think that it's possible to fill a memory palace, and then they worry that they won't be able to reuse their memory palace for more words and phrases. Or they may have some other hang-up, such as the idea that memory palaces are good for lists, but not learning phrases in a way that helps them be able to generate completely new sentences thanks to finally understanding the grammar of a language. These misconceptions all make sense, but they're also the consequence of overthinking and underutilizing the technique itself. So let's have a look at it, shan't we? First, I suppose it's possible to fill a memory palace to the point that it can't accept a single further data point. But I haven't seen this to be the case in practice, and here's why. First, serious users of memory techniques like the magnetic memory method never have just one memory palace in the first place. They are always using multiple memory palaces. In the magnetic memory method, we code them to the alphabet, which means that the first memory palace network involves one memory palace for each letter of the alphabet. And that truly is just the first network. You can, in fact, encode another memory palace to another alphabet, but you can also have what we call a double alphabet, and we can have what's called a 00 to 99 PAO. So those are matters for more advanced topics and lessons and so forth, but just keeping with this idea of 26 memory palaces as an opening exercise to help you master the art of memory and make a massive step towards learning a language, 26 memory palaces with 10 words in each, just 10. Well, that totals 260 words. It's a great milestone and easily done, typically within a month. You now have the basis for adding a sentence to each of these words that you've established. So if on average each sentence has, let's say, 10 to 15 words, you're looking at a substantial amount of scale. There will be no saturation. Now, for people who are in the game and they're starting to do this, then they encounter certain, let's call them issues, because there's no evenness here, right? You might have some words and choose not to add a phrase to each and every word. So then you would say, well, I'm not going to get, a factor of 10 out of this one memory palace. The point remains the same. Scale is available. Take a spoon or a bucket, the ocean of language doesn't care. And neither does the infinite space of your memory. Well, perhaps not infinite, but neuroscientists like David Eagleman reckon you've got room for a zettabyte in your brain, which is approximately enough space to store much of the information in the world. So you're not going to run out, okay? Third, you can reuse memory palaces. This is more of an intermediate advanced level of skill, but the point is you can work up to it. And typically, we don't do it that much because it's so much easier to rack and stack new memory palaces into place. Just walk down the street. You probably haven't used most of the city that you live in, and, I haven't even used my street yet as a memory palace. It's there, just waiting, right? So technically, you can reuse memory palaces. There are many options available for exploring this. And one way you do it is you just change the color of a memory palace that you've already used. Or you can add a feature to it, such as changing wooden walls to stone walls. Or you can make the walls made out of fire, made out of clouds. I find these activities very, very good for practice and stretching your skills, but they rarely lead to the same accomplishments that the options we've already discussed create. And besides, would you save a lot of time by just using fundamental memory palaces based on foundations of the technique and actual locations that you've seen without spending time altering them. Plus, these activities of altering memory palaces, reusing them, etc., well, you could be spending that time on recall rehearsal and reading, writing, speaking, and listening the language, so you're getting highly optimized doses of repetition that exposes you to more words and phrases you might want to memorize. My message is, my coaching, my advice is put the content into use in the most direct manner possible. Okay, so another question is, how do you get all of these memory palaces? It's very simple. I recommend you use the alphabet. Think of someone you know whose first or last name starts with A. Or maybe it's a business like the Apple Store or Applebee's restaurant. Whatever you choose, Make a quick sketch. And now you've got an A memory palace. Keep going until you have the entire alphabet covered with one memory palace for each letter of the alphabet. Now you might feel a bit rusty the first time you complete this exercise. That's normal. Sitting still causes even the best bike chain to seize up. So in this case, action is the oil that will loosen you up. And action reveals all the spatial options you already have in your mind. I've seen it again and again and again. People say, I doubted this is going to work, but I took action. Now I can't stop myself from having ideas. Oh, it's beautiful. Now, don't get hung up if you can't think of a memory palace for X. Chances are you know a church with a cross outside. That's kind of like an X. Or you've seen an X-Men movie in a movie theater. Or you know a library where you could spend an afternoon reading about Malcolm X. You don't have to actually go there. You can just use your mind to label that library as an X. Now, there are close enough substitutions like these, or you can get away without having one word for every letter of the alphabet, I guess. But, I like to push myself a little bit, challenge, and grow. Okay, so you might be wondering, whoo, that sounds like a lot of work. How long should all this take? Back when I used to teach the magnetic memory method live, we pulled most of a memory palace network out of ourselves within 30 to 60 minutes or less.
My name's Tom. I just went to the class with Anthony. And I thought it's just changed my opinion on how to learn languages entirely. He taught us how to build a memory palace. I went home last night, half an hour later, and I could not only recite 50 idioms from Chinese, but also it was really fun. It's really fun. So if you're interested in anything that Anthony's written or any classes that he gives, highly recommend. First-hand experience. It's a fun and really effective way to learn huge amounts of information, which otherwise I reckon are pretty boring. So, yeah, really, really recommend.
You can move at a similar speed on your own, put the devices aside, and get a piece of paper. But, I've had some people who take years to set it up. I've seen people take weeks. I've seen people take months. I've seen people do it in less than half an hour, less than 20 minutes. I myself can come up with a new one usually between 5 to 10 minutes. All I ask is that you dig deep. Start making at least a couple memory palaces, think of them alphabetically, and start memorizing vocabulary, as Benny says, from day one, so that you can try using this technique to scale words to phrases. All of this gets into the waters of intrinsic and extrinsic motivation. So you really need to know thyself in order to figure out how to give yourself the prompts that work for you to get you to do the most obvious thing in the world, which is to take action. Now, personally, I can share that I'm a pusher. I talk to myself as if I'm a soldier, and, that's not just for getting memorization done, it's for getting all the things that I can do completed. From making hundreds of videos to writing long detective novels about David Williams and his adventures using memory techniques to help him solve crimes. In one of the books I have planned, he's going to learn a language to help him solve a crime, and he's gonna have to figure out a way to motivate himself. So I'm not a big fan of putting on kid gloves or negotiating with myself, at least in these areas. In other areas, I need to be a little bit softer with myself. But nonetheless, I normally stare the task square in the eyes, call a spade, and then get busy, and I don't stop until the task is done. Weiyu chomo, as I've learned to say in Mandarin. My tones might be a little rusty there, but that basically means make hay while the sun shines. However you get yourself moving, I think it's important to remember that there really is only so much sun, and we all have the same 24 hours a day. Memory, specifically procedural memory, can help put wind in your sails. And that's why I give you these exercises. It will help you develop the procedure of taking action. But in order to get wind in your sails, it's up to you to build the boats, up to you to raise the sails, up to you to get those boats and your sails into the water in the first place. I can't think of anything more fun to do than explore memory, but I know that we're in a world of distraction. So remember the tale of Alexander the Great and the philosopher Diogenes. Alexander the Great sees Diogenes sitting in the sun, and he comes up to Diogenes and says, Diogenes, you're my favorite philosopher in the world. I will grant you one wish, whatever you want, and I can, because I'm Alexander the Great. And Diogenes looks up at Alexander the Great and he says, "Get out of my sun!" And Alexander the Great says, "You know, Diogenes, if I wasn't Alexander the Great, I would want to be Diogenes." What's the message here? The message is that you taking action is the most fulfilling thing in the world, and you already have all the alphabetical associations based on pop culture, your teachers, your friends, the library down the street, the churches, the cafes. You have it all rattling in your mind. It is the sun. And you've just got to get rid of the distractions so that you can apply the art of memory and the magnetic memory method's version of it to memorizing all the words and phrases that you want. That's how I've done it. I often say, "Get out of my sun, get out of my sun, get out of my sun." And then I gather and collect the information that I want to memorize and I put it into my memory. Using memory techniques is fun, it's direct, it's easy, and there's a clear and obvious answer. Get yourself to do it by know thyself and enjoy the perfect science, the art and craft of memory, where you can study your results immediately. Our species has maintained this art and science and craft for the precise reason that using the art of memory is the experience of perfection, but one that does not make you get hung up on perfectionism. And that's because even when you make mistakes, which even the most talented memory competitors of our time do, I make mistakes, we all use them as opportunities to explore memory that much more. We observe the mistake and we get curious about it. We take action on it. To be a memory master is precisely that, to take action, to use the triumphs and the downfalls as opportunities to learn and forge a better relationship with the practice of memory itself, the practice of learning itself. So if anything is holding you back and you think there's anything I can do or say or cheerlead or dance to make it more clear just how rich and profound this practice is, let me know and also let it be known. The only limits here are the ones you allow. So empty the bowl of fear, empty the limitation and the scarcity. There's more room inside your mind than you can possibly imagine, and it all begins with a piece of paper, a pen, the alphabet, and the people that you can think of based on their names, the locations you can think of just by thinking about their names. Let the alphabet guide your mind into what Thales called the ultimate realm, space itself, megaston topos, hapantagar kori. I used memory techniques to memorize that phrase in a memory palace, and no finer words were ever uttered other than, "Get out of my sun!"